We're back on record at 11:28 a.m. Please continue.
Okay, when we before we took the break, we were talking about the annual conventions that LuLaRoe holds generally. And I think earlier you had talked about sort of different experiences, I think you call them, at convention. Does that sound right?
Yes.
Okay. What do you mean by an experience?
Excuse me. We called our trade show floor experiences instead of trade show. That sounded kind of boring, so we went with experiences because there's things we want them to learn, and we believe that you can oftentimes learn through an experience, so we tried to facilitate learning.
And did that floor of experiences or trade look sort of like a trade show floor with different booths or areas?
I don't believe so. I believe it looked better.
Okay, and how so?
Because they were intentionally designed to be appealing and to be inviting and be different.
And is setting up convention through these experiences something that happens at every convention?
Would you reread the question, please?
Is setting up convention through these experiences something that happens at every convention?
Objectives to form.
Could you please restate?
Sure. The experiences you're describing, is that the setup at every convention?
No.
Is it something that LuLaRoe more recently introduced?
Yes.
When did it introduce the experiences?
It was either 2016 or 2017.
Can you give me some examples of what some of the experiences would have been?
Yes, one was, for example, a dreams booth where they could come in, identify some of their dreams and goals, and write them down, potentially formulate a plan, some ways to accomplish those. One might have been a clothing showcase, like showing them clothing that we produce or will be producing and information about said clothing so they could have knowledge and information. One would have been a fabric experience where we had fabrics that we produce our clothing in on hand for them to touch, to feel, to understand and get to know so they could talk about it more in depth. One might have been on, I guess it would depend on which year you're asking and trying to recall.
Sure, I'm just asking for some examples.
Yeah.
And these were all in one room? Or were they
Yes.
sort of in breakout rooms?
They were in a hall at the Anaheim Convention Center.
Is there usually a time at convention where everyone is gathered in one room with a speaker and a stage? I think you were referring to a stage earlier.
Yes.
Are there ever sort of smaller breakout sessions at conventions?
Yes.
Does LuLaRoe ever hold trainings at conventions?
What do you mean?
Trainings for independent fashion retailers?
There are many things taught and shared from stage or in classroom type settings.
And when you say from stage, are you referring to the main stage with the entirety of the convention there?
Yes.
Okay.
Or a smaller breakout stage.
Who at LuLaRoe decides on the content for those sessions, whether the big session or the smaller breakout sessions?
I believe we already answered that, but I could repeat. Collaborative effort with Kenny and the team that he works with, the leadership and sales team. Mark and Deanne, Art, myself, potentially leaders, meaning mentors, coaches, trainers, or other independent fashion retailers.
Is there usually one person or one team that's primarily responsible for setting the content?
Ultimately, it's Kenny's responsibility working with Mark and Deanne.
You said things are taught either from the main stage or in smaller sessions. Is one of the items that is taught in that context ever how to sell LuLaRoe clothing?
Oh, yes.
And who has taught that subject in the past?
I don't recall all of them.
When was the first time that how to sell LuLaRoe clothing was taught at convention?
The first time we had a convention, from my understanding. I was not at the first one, but I recall that was a topic discussed. And then every convention since then has had that as a topic.
Has the topic become more prominent over time?
No. We've always maintained a dedication to helping retailers sell clothing.
Has one of the topics taught ever included how to recruit retailers to join your team as a retailer?
Could you please restate?
Yeah, has recruiting retailers been a subject that was taught at convention?
I'm unsure.
You don't remember? Or you don't know?
With that exact wording, I'm unsure if we ever shared how to recruit.
Have you ever shared how to build a team?
Have I ever shared?
As LuLaRoe at convention, has that ever been taught?
I believe so.
And who was responsible for teaching that?
I don't recall.
When was the first time you recall how to build a team being taught or discussed at convention?
I don't remember.
Has it been discussed at every convention?
I'm sure that was a topic of discussion with retailers attending the event.
No, again, I'm talking about in the context of being taught either on the main stage or in breakout sessions.
It's possible. I don't recall.
So I'm handing you what's been previously marked as Exhibit 169, and I'll give you a moment to take a look at it. For the record, this is Bates numbered LLR-WA000240069, and is an email dated June 30th, 2014 from Justin Lyon. Do you recognize this document?
It looks like an email.
Does it look like an email that you sent in June 2014?
It appears to be so.
Looking at the bottom of the page, going under this and through to the next page, is that your email signature that you had at the time?
I believe so.
Okay. It says Mystical Permissions Wizard under your name. What does that mean?
That was the title I held at Yo Gabba Gabba, which meant producer, and was a fun take. Being a children's television show, we came up with our own titles because producer sounded boring.
Okay. So then you transferred that over to your signature block at LuLaRoe?
Yes.
Yes. And then looking at the second page, it says brand manager at LuLaRoe. Was that your title at the time back in 2014?
I don't know. Possibly.
Okay, and looking at the content of the email, it looks like you are emailing a group of people with a list of breakout sessions for convention. Does that sound right?
It looks right by the subject of the email.
Okay. And I think you said earlier, your recollection is that you didn't attend the 2014 convention?
No. I didn't attend LuLaRoe's first convention,
Okay.
which I don't recall whether that was at the end of 13 or... There was an event that they called a convention, which was a very small event, which was the only one I had not
Okay.
attended.
So this planning that is happening in this email was for a convention that you did ultimately attend?
Yes.
And you were involved in planning?
Yes.
Okay. And it looks like you're emailing a list of breakout sessions that were planned, at least as of the date of the email. Who was it that decided what those breakout sessions would be?
I don't remember who decided that.
Were you involved in deciding?
Possibly.
And it looks like under a lot of the topics, there are, in parentheses, names. Are those people who are going to lead those breakout sessions?
I believe it says, unless noted in bold, who was teaching them had not been finalized
Okay.
or determined.
So if it's in bold, it had been finalized. If it was not in bold, it was thoughts or ideas, but not necessarily finalized. Is that fair?
That appears to be the case.
Okay. Who selected who would lead each session?
I do not recall.
Did you attend any of the sessions?
I don't recall. Possibly? It was 6 years ago, I don't remember.
Would these sessions have been sessions that occurred in separate rooms, or were they more booths on a floor similar to the experiences you were describing earlier?
I'm trying to remember convention 2014. I don't believe these were booth/experiences, because that had not come into play yet. This event was held, I believe, at the Doubletree in Ontario. I don't remember the specifics of how this event went as far as schedule and flow.
At this time, would the schedule have been the responsibility of someone on your team?
It would have been a collaborative effort, likely with many of the people this was sent to in the to line of this email at that time.
Okay, I think I don't have any other questions about that. Do you ever recall Deanne Brady Stidham handing bonus checks out to IFRs at convention?
I don't recall.
You've talked about a main stage at convention. Is that something that there's been at every convention since the first one you attended in 2014?
Yes.
Roughly how much time of the program time at convention is spent with the main stage versus breakout sessions or experiences or other aspects of convention?
That varies. Last year, which is the most recent one I can recall, we had half or just under half of the general session time from the main stage, if I'm remembering correctly.
What about, so that would have been the 2019 convention?
2019, yes.
And what about the 2018? Do you recall?
I would guesstimate similar.
And what about 2017?
I believe that one would. Are you asking, what was the question again, asking about that?
Sort of roughly how much time of the planned time is on the main stage versus other aspects of convention?
I believe 2017 was a fourth of the time. 2018 might have been a third. I don't, again, the events are all mixing together.
Sure. Does it sound like in recent years there's been an increasing focus on the main stage versus the other aspects?
It sounds like there may have been an increase in the time. I don't know, actually. I'd have to look at them all and compare them
Yeah.
to answer that accurately.
Sure. Who at the company regularly speaks at the main stage at convention?
Deanne Brady Stidham, Mark Stidham.
Anyone else?
As far as speaking, meaning addressing the whole audience, or meaning what?
Addressing the whole audience.
With, and do you mean by a presentation, or what do you mean by that?
In any way.
Kenny and or myself often are on stage, but that doesn't mean we're teaching. Emceeing, as in hosting the event. And other people from the company would have spoken as asked to or called upon. But regularly was your question, I believe. Mark and Deanne for sure would have spoken at every event.
And are decisions regarding who would speak made by that same collaborative team you referred to earlier?
That would depend on the event. Like after seeing this email you just shared, there are people that were at the company in 2014 or working with the company in 2014 that would have been involved collaboratively in that decision.
So it would have changed over time?
Yes.
Understood. Did leaders, such as coaches, mentors, or trainers, ever address the audience from the main stage?
Yes.
And who decided which leaders would address the audience?
That would have been a collaborative effort. Ultimately, Mark and Deanne would be responsible, but Kenny may have decided. It would have been likely discussed potentially as a group. But
You said you sometimes have sort of a host or MC role at convention. Did you have that role in 2018?
I believe so.
When you were addressing the audience at the 2018 convention, did you tell the audience that they should look to make LuLaRoe bigger than they are?
I don't remember the exact words shared from stage during my presentation.
Do you remember saying something to that effect?
I don't remember.
Do IFRs receive written materials from the company at convention?
Yes.
What sort of written materials?
An agenda, meaning a schedule. That's the majority. I know for sure they usually receive that.
Anything else that they've ever received in terms of written materials?
There could have been handouts at an experience. There could have been handouts from a breakout class. I don't recall and don't know all of them, to be honest. Not to be honest, but in recollection.
Sure. Who at LuLaRoe? Let's start with the agenda or the schedule. The physical written one that is going to be passed out to IFRs at the convention. Is there anyone at LuLaRoe who would approve that?
I would have approved the grammar, punctuation, timing, logistics, but as far as who and what the content was, would have been likely Kenny in collaboration with Mark and Deanne and potentially others, as mentioned a few times.
And if there were materials used at an experience or in a breakout class, was there a process for review and approval of those?
Objection. Form.
If there was a handout, please repeat the question.
So you said there may have been handouts at an experience or in a breakout class. Did LuLaRoe have a process for review and approval of materials such as those?
Objection. Vague as to time.
Go ahead.
When are you speaking about?
Has there ever been a process?
Yes.
When was that process implemented?
There would have been a process every year for that specific year of convention.
So a process every year, but it may have changed.
Yes.
Let's go back to 2018. What was the process then?
2018. It would be a guesstimate, but it likely would have been whoever is responsible for that experience coming up with what they would like as the handout, submitting the content of said handout, and then getting that approved and then having that designed by the graphics team, and then having that approved, and then going to production and having a sample of that approved prior to producing them, and then receiving the handouts, if I recall correctly.
So let's break that down a little bit. You said first that the content would be proposed and then approved.
Yeah.
Who would approve the content?
2018. Might have been Kenny or myself. I believe Kenny would have been ultimately responsible for those things. And this is 2.5 years ago. I believe in 2018 it would have been Kenny.
Okay. What about, and then you said it would go to the design team,
Mhm.
and then it would be approved. Who would it be approved at that stage by?
Either by Mikola or myself.
Sorry, who?
Mikola? Michala?
Or you?
Mm-hmm.
And what's
Yes.
Nicola's last name?
Meaders.
Andrews.
Meaders.
And is Nicola a member of the design team?
She was at the time.
She was at the time, okay. And you said then it would go to a sample. Who would prepare the sample?
The design team would have given it to a production company. That could have been web, or could have been through our internal LuLaRoe team that handles printing of documents or handouts, materials, etc.
And then who would approve the sample?
Would have either been Mikola, Kenny, or myself.
Was there a process for documenting the approval? Would it be via email, or was there a central document that would mark the stages, for example?
It likely would have been in person.
So through a conversation?
Yes.
Okay.
It's possible there were some email approvals and or on a doc. Most likely in person.
Was the process similar in other years, but variations by who approved, or were there variations of other natures?
I believe they would have been similar, but varying on who approved and who was printing, producing.
So the process stayed similar, but the players, the people changed? Would that be a fair characterization?
I don't recall us having handouts every year, so I don't know the process would have. The process would have likely been similar, but I don't believe we had handouts every convention.
Okay. But if you had convention, the process would have been similar. Or, sorry, strike that. If you had handouts at convention, the process would have been similar.
It would have likely been similar.
I'm going to shift a bit to talking about the in-person tours. And I believe you said the events team was involved in planning for the in-person tours as well?
Yes.
Okay. So I think just to confirm, the 2015 tour was called Dare to Dream. Does that sound right?
That sounds right, but I have to verify, yeah.
Okay. And the 2016 tour was called Inspire?
That sounds right as well.
And 2017 tour was called Be the Light?
No.
No? Was it called Inspire again?
No. The theme for 2017 was Be. I don't recall if the tour, I don't believe the tour was called Be the Light that year, though.
Okay.
That was the name of one of our events.
Okay. What was the tour called in 2018?
Mhm. 2018. Was that Connect or was that 2019? I don't recall.
You recall one being called Connect, you're not sure which year.
I believe Connect was last year, 2019. I'm trying to recall the theme for 2018.
Who decides those themes?
That's a collaborative effort.
Are you involved?
Usually, yes.
Were there any years that you weren't involved?
I don't believe so.
What's your understanding of the purpose of the tours?
The purpose of the tour was to bring people together. So again, community, helping facilitate friendships and collaboration. Would have been teaching them principles that would have helped in selling or motivation mindset or helping them with goal setting. There could have been a number of topics for the tour.
Who decides what cities the tour will go to?
I believe it was Kenny and Deanne that would often decide that.
And is a tour often, strike that. Is a tour usually a one-day event?
Could you please restate the question?
So if a tour goes to a particular city, is it usually one day at that city?
Usually.
Has it ever been more than one day?
You're saying more than one day at a specific city council?
Yes.
I don't believe so. There were a few times we'd have like a get together the night before if people happened to be in town already or in the city. But and the trains weren't always a full day.
Yeah. Were for each tour, were the trainings similar city to city within that tour? For example, in the 2016 tour, would there be a similar training agenda, and that training agenda would follow through as city by city, or would the agenda or content change city by city?
I don't recall, but it would have likely had some similar content and had some content that would have changed.
Did you attend the tour yourself?
Objection vague's time.
Have you ever attended any of the tours yourself?
I have attended some of the tours, yes.
Not all?
No.
Is there someone from the events team who would be responsible for attending every city in a given tour?
No?
Who would be responsible for the logistics in any given city for the tours?
When specifically?
I'm talking generally. I'm trying to just get a general idea of how things worked. If it varied over years, then let me know. But generally, was the events team responsible for the logistics of the city? Was that outsourced to an IFR who was local, for example?
It was usually someone from the events team. I believe there was a year where we may have used an outside, like one of the event logistics companies that we used for convention. that may have helped with the tour date stops and contracts, etc. But the events team usually handle the logistics of the events.
Were IFRs asked to register for a particular tour stop?
Yes.
And was that done through one of the vendors that we talked about for convention, or did you use different vendors for that?
Throughout the years, there's been various ways of registering for the tour. Some may have been through us, some may have been through those event logistics companies.
Were IFRs asked to pay a fee when registering? Ever?
Jackson, Vegas, the time.
I'm talking,
Also Foundation.
talking ever.
There may have been. I don't believe they all did, though.
Do you recall any specific tours that had a registration fee?
No.
Oh, so this is, sorry. So handing you what's been previously marked as Exhibit 111, which for the record is LLR-WA 00005706. I'll give you a moment to take a look at it. Have you seen this document before?
Maybe?
I mean, for the record, it's an email dated August 14th, 2015 to Deanne from LuLaRoe, where fashion meets comfort. And in it, it has a graphic that says Dare to Dream Tour. And then a little bit further down, it has a list of upcoming trainings with dates. Does that look to be an accurate, at least partial list of tour dates and locations for the 2015 Dare to Dream Tour?
Objection, Foundation.
It appears to be from September through November.
Okay. And this was a tour that your events team was responsible for managing the logistics for?
I believe so.
Did you attend this training tour at all?
It is very possible that I attended some of them. Definitely did not attend all of them.
Was there anyone from LuLaRoe that attended all of the locations on a given tour?
Talking about the 2015 tour?
Talking generally, would there be anyone who would attend, sort of be responsible? You're going to attend every location on a particular tour.
I don't believe so.
Okay, you can put that aside. hand you what's been marked as Exhibit 113. For the record, it's LLR-WA 00006054.
You did say 113, right?
Yes, it's on the document.
Yep. I just thought I heard a
Oh.
different number, that's why.
I'll give you a moment to take a look and let me know when you're done. Have you seen this document before?
It looks familiar.
The subject says it's a LuLaRoe weekly home office update notes. Are you familiar with weekly home office update emails?
Yes.
And who are they usually go to?
To independent fashion retailers.
And this email talks about, turning to page, the Bates number ending in 6056. It talks about the 2016 Inspire training tour. Is that a training tour that you were involved in planning and logistics for?
I believe so.
Did you attend any of the training dates listed on this document?
Some, yes.
Which ones did you attend?
I don't recall exactly all of them. I know I went to the Oahu, Hawaii one, the Orange County and San Diego ones, and I believe there were others I attended, but I don't remember exactly. The New York one looks like I would have attended, possibly. Possibly Salt Lake. It's likely I attended more than that. I just don't recall which ones.
Okay. Looking at the message, starting on the first page and going into the second page from Deanne. At the top of the second page, she states, last year our trainings were averaging about 60 to 80 people in attendance. Does that sound about right to you for what the average was for the 2015 training tour?
That sounds about right.
Okay. And then further down, she says we're now seeing between 200 to 500 people coming to learn with us. Does that sound about right?
It sounds about right.
If you wanted to verify that, would there be somewhere in LuLaRoe's documents that you could look to verify?
Oh man, maybe.
Where would you go to look?
I don't know.
You said that earlier that the event registration companies that you use sometimes hold that registration info and sometimes provide it to the events team. Am I getting that right?
Yes.
Yeah. Did you use an events registration team for the 2016 tour?
I don't remember.
Is there anywhere that the events registration team, or sorry, strike that. Is there anywhere that the events team keeps records of who registered for past tours?
Jackson Foundation.
I am not sure.
If you were trying to determine who registered for a particular event in the past, would there be someone within LuLaRoe that you would go to ask?
I would go to the events team. The person that was leading the events team under my direction at the time is no longer with the company.
And who is that?
Sam Schultz.
When did Sam leave?
I don't remember the exact date.
Do you recall how many years ago it was, or months?
2 or 3 years ago? 2 years? I don't remember.
Was there someone
It's
who
a guess.
Sure. Was there someone who took over for Sam?
Bob Allender.
As a person responsible for the events team?
I was responsible for the events team, but Bob had this specific assignment of events director. He
Okay.
led the events team under my direction.
Does Bob still hold that role?
Yes.
Put that one aside. I'm going to turn to the LuLaRoe's annual cruise. I believe you said that was an event the events team is also responsible for, correct?
Yes.
Okay. And my understanding is that that cruise is let me start with that. My understanding is that IFRs can qualify for the cruise through various cruise incentives to be able to attend the cruise each year, correct?
Yes.
What aspects of the cruise is the events team generally responsible for?
Securing a cruise, meaning finding a cruise ship available, working through the negotiation of contracts with our legal and accounting teams, working on the dates and logistics with Kenny, Mark, and Deanne. And then once we had a cruise ship secured, we would have looked at the different ports, different days at sea, and the events team would have been responsible for any branding done on ship. If there's any LuLaRoe decals, stickers, branding, posters, content playing on screens, which was usually just like fashion editorial type vibes. We would have been responsible for if there were any meetings on the cruise ship, what those would have been, the schedule. We would have provided a schedule to the independent fashion retailers to know what days we were doing what days we were at port, what days we were at sea, if there's anything happening on the ship while we were at sea, if there's anything happening at port to know about. Would have been responsible for any of the team members attending the cruise to help with logistics and or event production. Many responsibilities.
In terms of the meetings or schedule, who would be involved in deciding what sort of meetings and schedule, strike that, who would have been involved in what sort of meetings would be on at each cruise, generally, either people or roles?
Mark and Deanne, Kenny, Art, myself, mentors, coaches, trainers, other independent fashion retailers. Depending on the year, could have been other individuals. I think Lauren might have been involved with some of the ones from last year. Yeah.
IFRs who attend through the cruise incentive have the cruise fees paid for them by LuLaRoe, correct?
Yes.
Okay. Does LuLaRoe also pay for any shore excursions or other events on the cruise?
If we hosted an event for the attendees of the cruise, we likely would have covered the fees for those, but they were generally responsible for their own shore excursions at their own desire and interest.
IFRs are responsible for their own travel?
Yes.
Oh, go ahead.
You also mentioned other events on the cruise. I mean, if there was a dance party, if there was karaoke, lip sync, like any of those other events on the cruise would have been covered by LuLaRoe and included with their attendance on the cruise.
Are attendees generally given a swag bag similar to the one you mentioned for convention?
We would often provide them with some sort of swag when they attended the cruise. It could vary from year to year.
Do cruise attendees ever receive any other written materials from LuLaRoe?
Yes.
What are those?
Emails with information, emails about logistics, emails about where and how to register, potentially what to pack, emails about dates and timing and schedule. Things of that nature.
Anything passed out at the cruise itself?
I believe we handed out a name badge, like a lanyard with a name badge, and a schedule that would have been printed.
Anything else?
Last year, the year before, possibly the year before, we would hand them a passport, it was called, which was basically just a booklet of activities they could do on the cruise. And if they did them, they could get like a pin or button or something of the sort.
Does LuLaRoe have an events app?
Yes.
How is the events app used?
What do you mean?
Well, I guess, what is the events app that LuLaRoe maintains?
It is an app where independent fashion retailers can find information about our events.
So what sort of information?
Could be dates and time. Could be information about what is happening during those dates and time. Could be potential speakers. Sorry, not potential. It could be information about speakers or topics being shared and presented. Locations are often shared in the events app.
So if someone attended a particular event, say a cruise, would the specific schedule for that particular cruise be in the events app?
Not likely. I don't remember if we always put cruise information in the events app because there's not always Wi-Fi or service available on cruise ships, which would prevent them from being able to access or utilize any information there. The events app was primarily used for a convention. I think sometimes we had a tour on there and other events. Remember, we had difficulties with the cruise because of the connectability.
Sure, understood. So let's talk about convention. That'll be easier. If an IFR attended a particular convention, would they be able to open up the events app and see all of the different events going on at convention that year? You know, the different breakout sessions, the main stage sessions, all of that we discussed earlier?
Likely, yes, if they downloaded and installed the app on their device and it was synced. They should have been able to access information about that event, yes.
And so that would include who might be speaking and on what topics?
It could. Sometimes we kept those things a surprise. We didn't always share who the speakers were. Often we'd share the topic potentially, but not who the speaker was.
Okay. I think we talked, you said also another type of event that the events team has been responsible for is leadership conferences or leadership events. Is that right?
Yes.
What are those?
Those are events where leaders, meaning trainers, coaches, sponsors, and more recently cruise qualifiers and above in sales, to come to, again, build community, to make friends, share, collaborate, and learn.
And without going too much into the details, is the events team's role similar to the other types of events we've been talking about in terms of the logistics and registration for those events?
Yes.
Okay.
Sorry, my foot's caught on a cord.
How often does LuLaRoe hold leadership conferences or events?
2 to 3 times a year.
Does the location vary?
Yes.
Do IFRs need to pay a registration fee when they attend?
Yes.
And what does that fee cover when they pay? Does it include food, lodging, anything else? Or does it include those?
That includes their registration fee, any swag that we would give them, sometimes a meal or meals, and or events that are held.
So the IFRs who attend need to pay for their own accommodations
Yes.
and pay for their own travel.
Yes.
How much is the registration fee usually?
I believe leadership is usually around 99, potentially 149, depending on the timing.
There's something called the Super Saturday. Does that sound familiar to you?
Yes.
Is that an event that the events team usually is involved in planning or facilitating?
Not normally.
What is your understanding what Super Saturdays are?
Those are usually local trainings held by leaders, meaning mentors, trainers, coaches, or local retailers for independent fashion retailers in a local area, and usually on a Saturday, but not always.
Good, just one more document and then we can probably take a break. Handed what's been marked as 244. For the record, this is Bates numbered LLR-WA 000-27970. Do you recognize this document?
Looks familiar.
It looks like at the bottom of the first page it is an email from Jordan Brady, and it doesn't say who it's to, but then the response is from you. Who's Jordan Brady?
Jordan Brady is my brother-in-law.
And he works for LuLaRoe, correct?
Yes.
What is his role?
When he sent this,
Sure, when he said this.
he was, I believe, producing this event.
Was he part of the events team at the time?
Yes.
So did he report to you?
Yes.
And it looks like he's asking you to proof an email and send it back to you, and then you responded with a revised email. Does that sound right?
That looks to be the case, yes.
Okay. And in the email, he says, and in your revised email, it says, there are our top 150 consultants from across the company. They want to spend as much time with the family as they can. With that in mind, Deanne and Mark want you all to be present as possible. What was your understanding of what that meant?
Which part?
The first paragraph in your revision.
It meant that we had an important event with 150 consultants from across the country, and they enjoy spending time with the family and wanted to do so. And so Deanna and Mark wanted us to attend as many of the events as possible so we could be there for them and love on them and support them.
Need you to speak up just a little bit.
Was that an expectation for LuLaRoe events more generally beyond just this event?
What was the question?
Was that an expectation to be present at the events, at LuLaRoe events more generally beyond just this one leadership event addressed in this email?
Objection, vague.
Yeah, I'm not sure I understand the question.
Was there an expectation for a family to attend LuLaRoe events?
Same objection.
Was there an expectation?
Yeah.
They wanted us to attend as many events as we could. If we could not attend an event, there was no repercussion.
If and when you say they wanted us to attend as many events as we could, who's they?
You mentioned Mark and Deanne, and so they was referring to Mark and Deanne.
What's your understanding of why they wanted to attend, the family to attend as much as, strike that. What is your understanding of why Mark and Deanne wanted the family to attend as many events as they could?
Objection, foundation.
I'm asking for your understanding.
Family is important to us, and family is one of our main missions and purposes to strengthen families. We have a close family, and we wanted as many of our family to be there to love on them and their families.
We can put that aside, and we can go off the record.
Hold the record at 12:37 p.m.